We're theme park families.
Theme park families.
We're theme park families.
Won't you join us now?
We're theme park families.
Thanks for joining us, we aim to please.
If roller coasters got you weak in the knees,
We're theme park families.
if you wanna find the best dessert or
Take a potty break with privacy,
find a coaster that is tame for little ones,
or one to make you scream.
we're theme park families.
Everybody's ready, babies.
Rescuing you all from life's luxuries.
We're theme park families.
We're theme park families.
Press the space bar. Yeah.
You know when you start seeing everybody's Facebook posts with their kids' first day of school pictures that the summer's almost over. I know you all love seeing those. Those are always so exciting. You ready?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it has been a very long summer, and I'm kind of ready to get back to school.
Okay, so you are. You're looking forward to it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So that sounds good. I mean, I know a lot of high school age kids don't love going back to school, but good to see that you still like it.
Well, it's more because I want to see some of my friends, but...
Oh, exactly. And that's exciting, and learn a lot of new stuff, and new vocabulary, and math, and reading, and all that good stuff, so that's important.
I'm Andrew,
And I'm Adam.
and thanks for joining us again.
People seem to love this time of year. I see on Facebook posts and Twitter that everyone is so excited that we're getting into almost Halloween season in a lot of the parks, and people are excited that they're going to be cooler temps. How easily people forget last winter and all those days of horrific 15 degrees below zero days and snow days and 2.5 feet drifts. People who are too excited about the fall seem to forget that, because I happen to love summer, but fall means that winter's
I
coming.
like fall because my birthday's in fall, so...
Woo! Yeah, that's coming up pretty soon, which is exciting.
This time of year is exciting because all of the 2019 announcements have been made and are coming, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, tomorrow's the big day. We get the Six Flags announcement early in the morning. I know, actually, as we record this at 9:54, Magic Mountain is tonight, but we'll wait till tomorrow to hear all that. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, excited to hear about all the Six Flag parks and what they're adding, and what other park announces tomorrow?
Oh, well, Carowinds announces theirs.
Yeah,
Which will be pretty big.
Yeah, Granny's Secret, their largest investment in Carowinds history. So really excited to hear all that news tomorrow.
Yep.
Only a couple of hours away.
Have you heard any rumors about what the one at Magic Mountain might be?
Yeah, the rumors, and I've tried to stay away from a lot of them. This is one of the only ones I know, in Great America as well, that the rumors are for Magic Mountain that it's going to be a launch coaster and possibly a launched dueling coaster.
Oh, wow, that's unique.
It is, and a lot of people don't think it's going to be mock, because mock coasters tend to be a lot more expensive, more than Six Flags wants to pay. So a lot of people are thinking S&S, possibly.
Or Intamin, but...
Intamins are pretty expensive too, and there are reliability issues, so I don't know. So S&S seems like a possibility. And then Great America, there are rumors at first that it was going to be a water park because they took down that theater, and now a lot of people are thinking that it might be a launched coaster as well, with some of the teases that they've had. But otherwise, I've tried to stay away from any rumors because I want to be surprised tomorrow, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
For this episode, we're going to be chatting about a little bit of the rest of our trip after the Costa Rica meetup at Silver Dollar City, which covered a lot of miles and a lot of new experiences as well. So we're going to discuss a little bit of that. But before we do, I just wanted to discuss, and maybe some of our older listeners don't really understand this, and maybe me as well, about your most recent obsession in the last month and a half or so. Can you explain, what it's all about and why it's such a big thing?
Well, okay. So...
First of all, what are we talking about?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? What's your recent obsession in the last
Oh,
month and a
okay.
half?
So how do I start?
Well, start by saying what we're talking about.
Okay, so we're talking about a video game, right?
Yes, we are.
And the name of it is called Fortnite.
All right, so explain to all us fuddy-duddies why Fortnite is such a big deal.
Well, I think it's just the first game of its kind that's like this. So it's basically a 99 people battle royale thing where there's a big map and 99 people. Well, actually, there are 100, including you. So there are a ton of people on this map, and you jump off a bus that's floating in the air, and you try to gather weapons and materials you can build. And the goal is trying to survive out of all the people and get the victory royale. You have to survive and you have to kill people in order to survive. You try to get the victory, and it's really hard because there are 99 other people playing with you.
All right, so what is it about the game that you love so much? And we held off on these kind of games for a long time until he got older. And so it's just recent that he started playing these kind of games in moderation.
So I think it's so fun because it's like there's so much competition and there's so much like you really try to get that victory when it's really hard. So I think that's what's addicting about this game.
You think part of it also is playing with friends online?
Oh yeah, and that too. I made a bunch of like new friends online, and it's cool because if you're playing with your friends, there are microphones so you can talk to each other and hear each other.
Well, I bring this up because of the possibility, thinking of theme parks, of if this popularity of this game continues, if it potentially could become an IP in a park, either a land or a ride or something like that.
Yeah, good.
Thinking of age groups and that 10 to 18 age group is so important for theme parks, just like Hunger Games in the Middle East became in Dubai, I believe, is a land. And to see if eventually Fortnite does enter the world of theme parks.
Yeah, and I could see it because in Fortnite, the map, it has a bunch of different areas you can land, like Tilted Towers, Dusty Divot, Paradise Palms, Lazy Links, Haunted Hills, Pleasant Park, and there's a ton more that I haven't named.
So you could have a theme park that has areas that look like those, and then the rides will be behind.
Yeah, they could make like a whole theme park that's just like themed to that.
Well, it would be very, very interesting. All right, so Fortnite, which is as big as it's ever been, as big as Pokemon was a couple years ago.
Pokemon Go.
Yeah, now Fortnite has just demolished it out of nowhere. Well, before we get to some news, I just wanted to thank a few people for 2 new reviews that came out in iTunes in the last couple of months that we just noticed. And one comes from D. Carroll from July the 24th. And his headline was Great Show and 5 stars, which is great to see. And D. Carroll states,
I listen to way too many theme park podcasts and just recently discovered Theme Park Families. Having several younger siblings, I love to take on my park adventures. The show is definitely near the top of my playlist. Thanks, and keep up the great content, guys.
Thanks so much, D. Carroll. And what I really liked about that, and something I've been thinking of, where D. Carroll says that I listen to a lot of different theme park podcasts. Now, when we got into listening to podcasts in those first bunch of months, I really only knew about the 2 big guys at the top, Coaster Radio and In the Loop. And after getting into this a little bit more, now I realize on Twitter and Facebook and seeing a lot of other posts how many other theme park podcasts there are. It's really staggering and overwhelming. And so that's why we are so grateful of those of you who have downloaded and listened and even reviewed, because there are so many options out there. So we really appreciate that. From August 1st, we had PP1-2, who stated, love this podcast, also with a 5-star rating, and stated,
great family podcast with a unique perspective from Andrew, who I've heard has been on a lot of coasters. Their opening song is my favorite for all podcasts. Sorry, RuPaul's What the Tea?
Are you familiar with What the Tea? Can you sing a little bit?
I'm not.
What the tea?
Oh.
What the tea? No, I don't know. Something like that. Thank you so much for that. Wow, that our song he likes better than RuPaul. And I think anything RuPaul probably touches is gold. So I'll take that. Thanks so much for that, both of you. And we're just so happy to be here for you guys and be producing some...
Yeah, it's so cool. Like, you guys have been saying all these nice words. I'm looking at others right now, and they're saying that they want to listen to the podcast. Like, every time they're somewhere, they're always looking for a new one. and stuff, and so that's very nice.
Yes, and that gives us motivation to do it. So we appreciate that a lot. So let's get to some news.
If not riding coasters will give you the blues, it's Andrew's news.
Trivia question for you.
All right, some trivia. Let's go.
What's the fastest coaster out of these four right now? A. Alpine Bobsled at Great Escape. B. Volcano, the Blast Coaster at King's Dominion. C. Batwing at Six Flags America. Or D. Lightning Rod at Dollywood.
Okay, give them a second to think about it.
I'll give you a second.
All right, so let's see again. We got bobsled, volcano, batwing, lightning rod.
Time's up. If you answered any of them, you'd be wrong. They've all been down for extended periods of time with no signs of reopening.
Kind of sad, and it's a strange list of all of them, as some of those are really good coasters and some of them not so good. And yeah, they've all experienced huge problems and have been down for long stretches of time. Now, even when we went to Great Escape, gosh, that was 3.5 years ago.
It was down for at least 4 hours when we were there.
And then it would open and you'd rush to the line and just hope to be able to get on it before it
Yeah.
closed again. So that's been a disaster for a long time. Poor Volcano, and we'll see if it ever does reopen. There are a lot of rumors grumbling about if it's ever going to open again. But I'm glad you at least got on it once.
Yeah, I'm glad I at least got on it once, and so I know what the experience is like.
But it's such a good coaster.
But yeah, I don't want it to close.
Yeah, so that's really sad. Batwing, a lot of people think it's in the lower half of the Flying Dutchman.
I'm not really sad about that one because I already did the clone at Carowinds. I actually like those type of clones. I don't understand why people hate them.
Oh, so many people
cool.
bash them and say that they're so rough. I don't know. They never bother
Well, maybe
me at
it's
all.
not rough for me because I'm so small.
Yeah, your head doesn't even reach the over-the-shoulder
Yeah, it
restraints.
doesn't.
so that might help you a little bit in that way. And then Lightning Rod, the saga, which has been down, it feels like it's been down more this year than the first year when we got to ride it a bunch. So I don't know. Hopefully this much time being closed, they'll finally solve the problem, but we've said that for a couple years now.
It's like, I don't understand it. Are they still having problems with that launch? Haven't they tried to refix it over 4 times now?
So it's definitely the launch and the sensors is a problem. If one sensor gets out of place on that violent launch, then the ride shuts down. But I hear it's also that pothole in the first drop too. So there are a number of different issues with it.
Yeah, they gotta fix that.
And again, those rumors swirl, and I don't know if there's any truth to any of them, but of people saying, oh, would they take out that first little bunny hill after you get over the top and just make it a full, tall lift hill so that it could become a traditional lift hill and then it would ride reliably. But it would neuter the ride for me. I think the launch makes it great.
If they really have to with that pothole, they should make it at like an angle, like not completely straight down, but like at an angle so it can just go over that first hill and then, yeah.
And then that might solve the problem. We'll see as the year goes on, but it looks like all 4 of them might be closed.
So yeah, we'll see in like 7 years if all of them are closed.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1 year for that matter. Who knows? But Lightning Rod, that was too big of an investment.
Well, yeah, they probably won't close Lightning Rod because it was just open.
Yeah, no chance.
Canada's Wonderland announced Yukon Striker for 2019. While not surprising anyone, after all the pictures that surfaced the tunnel and track, it was a bit of a surprise to some that it'll be the tallest, longest, and fastest dive coaster in the world, beating Valraven's records only 3 years after.
This has already been out for a while, so everyone kind of knows about this, but our own thoughts about this coaster. You did see the POV when it came out.
Yeah, I saw the POV.
What'd you think?
It looks really cool. It's in and out of the mountain, and then you're like flirting with the water and stuff. And the inversions look so cool.
And I like how it kind of goes through Vortex a little bit.
Yeah, it goes through it, and yeah, and It looks really cool.
Yeah, first vertical loop for a dive coaster, so that makes it a little bit different as well. But I'm surprised, and I don't know if it surprised you, that they beat Valraven's record at Cedar Point. That was only, what now, a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago or so. So did that surprise you that Canada's Wonderland beat that record?
Well, I'm actually kind of not surprised because I think Canada's Wonderland is trying to kind of compete with Cedar Point and show them that we still got it. We're still like one of the top dogs.
And they are. In fact, and we'll see, with Cedar Point down this year, Canada's Wonderland might be that much more of a top dog. I'm surprised, though, that they allowed that record to break. At Valraven still, they have those statistics about the coaster pretty prominently displayed about the world records and the heights.
Yeah,
so,
like they have a couple like plaques near it that says, world's longest dive coaster or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like most inversions.
Exactly. So for them to beat that this soon after, I think shows how Cedar Fair really does like that park and sees its future as great. My hopes are that for next year, Leviathan and Behemoth that you'll do next year, that those lines will be a lot shorter now.
Yeah.
And they need capacity eaters. That is such a busy park. And while dive coasters, I don't think are the best, I certainly don't think they're the worst. So I think it's a great addition.
The good thing about them is they could hold a ton of people.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I think around 30 people, because there are around 10 in each row.
Exactly, depending on which one. I know some of the models have 12 and 10, but still, with 3 trains, go through a lot of people, and that's absolutely what that park needs. So a great addition, and we're really excited about getting there next year.
News out of Valley Fair in Minnesota. Hershey Park announced the re-theming of their Sally Shooter Dark Ride for the Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge to the Reese's Cup Fusion. They also submitted plans to the FAA for approval of a 220-foot tall coaster that appears to possibly be a B&M Out and Back coaster for 2020. This also includes a new entrance to make entry to the park much easier.
All right, so exciting, and that also kind of been out there for a while, but something we hadn't talked about. And really, you've only been to Hershey twice. Yeah. One was for a Twilight Day 2 years ago, where we got all the coasters in at that 40-inch mark that you were at 2 years ago. And then we were there for the Blink 182 concert. So those are the 2 times you've been there, so it's been a couple years since we've been back. But a lot of people on busy days say that entrance can get really congested, and that it was time for a new entrance with how busy that park gets.
Yeah, but where would that 220-foot coaster go? I mean, in the back, maybe?
They've been doing this for a couple of years now, where they rerouted a road that kind of goes behind the park, sort of, and rerouted it so that they can now add a lot more land. So there's a field next to the park where they're going to be able to make that a whole new land. So it's not only going to be a new coaster, but there's going to be other things near it. So that's going to be a huge addition. Now, I know they have a height requirement, so that's why they couldn't get a Giga there. But to have 2 hypers is kind of interesting now, right? With Sky Rush and that Intamin, that's really intense.
Yeah, well, would they be the only park that has a B&M hyper and then a Intamin hyper?
All right, I'm going out on a limb, and I don't know every park in the world, but I'm going to go with yes. That no park has 2 hypers that are B&M and Intamin that are just typical sit-down coasters.
But
how
do you know it's going to be a B&M yet?
Well, people have analyzed that based on where the track goes and how the footers look.
Also, one more question. How do you know it's going to be a coaster?
Because of the height along with the footers, and they already had the path of it, where they think it might potentially go around a fountain at the end, so they can see the layout of it, and it looks like a coaster. And this, you would think, think will be a B&M airtime machine with lots of floater air that people will enjoy, won't complain about the restraints. So you've got your hardcore enthusiasts who like a rough ride and can handle the pain, who'll do Sky Rush, one of the greatest hypers out there. And then your GP who doesn't like any kind of uncomfortable feelings, who will do the B&M hyper.
Well, it's not just GP who doesn't like Sky Rush and stuff. I mean, there's still some coaster enthusiasts that probably don't like the rougher stuff.
They're not real enthusiasts. Don't tell them that, but they're not.
Oh my gosh.
If they don't like El Toro and Sky Rush because it's too much, or Voyage, they're not real enthusiasts. I hit the pause button, right?
I hope.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to offend anyone. I think I did. I stopped it, so. Yeah. Oh, so the 2 great coasters now that they'll have over 200 feet. So next year, you'll definitely get back to Hershey, because you've got to do all those 54-inch coasters there that are really, really good. Well, our trip before the meetup started on a Wednesday in central New York, and we headed west. Waldemere's is a pretty good stopping point, about 3.5 hours west of where we live in New York. So it's a nice stopping point, and we've actually been there once before, just for a break. And you started in one of the shows, I remember.
Yeah.
When
I didn't start.
we literally stopped just to get out and stretch after a Cedar Point trip, and we weren't going to do any rides because we had just been at Cedar Point, but we just stopped there to see it for the first time.
Well,
and we sat in the show.
It's your fault because you made me raise my hand and I didn't even want to do it.
I don't remember that. I know you're not shy and you like to be in shows.
No, I didn't like that one because it was kind of weird.
I think, and you know what? On my phone, I still have that video. We should post it on our YouTube page.
No, please don't.
Because we have a number of videos that we're going to start posting, and I think we should show that one. Because you starred in it. You were amazing.
I did not star in it. It's very weird because the thing that I had to do.
Yeah, it was like predicting. It was like some kind of fake magic show where you had to predict what was going to happen or something. I don't know.
No, it was not.
It was something like that.
It was not close
and you
like
did
that.
it and you were amazing.
No, it was not close to that.
And so we didn't ride anything that day, but on this trip we had a little bit of time. And for the first time we did Ravine Flyer 2. Now, I know that coaster is so highly regarded and so many people put it in their top 10. And we did it once in the front and once in the back. And what did you think of Ravine Flyer 2?
I really liked Ravine Flyer 2. It was very good, and some of those tight turns are so fast and speedy, especially that one that's 90 degrees.
Yes, 90 degrees! Some of you might know that reference. I'm not going to tell you where to find it, but yeah, it was a thing back in the day. Beautiful view at the top. A lot of people mention that.
It's a great view, especially when you're going up the lift hill and then you get another view when you're going across the highway.
Yeah. So a lot of people compare that to Magnum with that view.
Yes.
The 2 hills over the road I thought were great. The turnaround in between is terrific. I thought the rest of the spaghetti bowls near the station was
just
it was sluggish, and maybe it's because it was mid-afternoon and maybe later at night it really starts picking up, but that whole second half I thought was kind of sluggish, liked it better in the back. And then we had time for one more and we did Comet, which was a historic coaster there.
Yeah.
And I was excited about that. I thought it was better than it was, right? It did nothing.
It did nothing. There was no air time. It literally was a few drops, a few curves, and it was over. There was no forces at all.
I like that it was in the trees, and that's about it. But still a nice looking coaster and a cool part of history. Well, from there we kept traveling west, just southwest of Cleveland, past Cedar Point, sadly. It's weird to drive to Cleveland, not go to Cedar Point. And we went to the Blossom Music Center, which is in the countryside, on a 2-lane road. And so when we got there, I told the boys that we were going to... I told the boys we were going to a food festival. It was around dinner time, and I said, boys, this is one of the best food festivals in all of the land. They bring in chefs from Sweden and France and Australia and Zimbabwe and Chechnya.
You did not tell us that.
Yeah, I was selling it so hard, and they were really hungry, so it worked out well. So
but as soon as we got out of the car, I knew something was fishy. I just knew it because I just knew it.
So we're walking then from the car, and people have all these shirts on that kind of gives it away. People are listening to music in their cars that gives it away. And we went past a couple of stands that had t-shirts that gave it away. And I kept trying to distract them, oh yeah, look over there. That's a cool car, and that kind of thing. And I used to do this kind of thing with them 3-4 years ago with theme parks. One of my favorites was when we went to Hershey Park, and you had a jacket that was... Wait, one of them was you had a jacket that was too small and needed to be returned, a brand new one. And I said, yeah, we're going to the store to go replace the jacket.
And then one of them was we had to get a new refrigerator.
new
Which actually worked because our refrigerator was broken.
Yeah, so a lot of times they had actual reasons to go. I love doing those kind of surprises, but now with
I
theme
knew
parks...
it was fishy at the start. I knew it was.
You didn't say anything.
Yeah, because I didn't want to ruin it for Alex.
What a great brother. All of a sudden in that moment you decided to be a great brother. I love it.
Well, I also saw the t-shirt stand.
Well, that one came later. So we got into the center, and again, it was over 19,000 people there, a sellout, and it was pretty jam-packed. It's one of these music centers like Darien Lake or Camden or the PNC Arts Center in New Jersey, where it has the seats underneath the roof and then the grass behind. And so we got there at like 7:05, and the concert started at 7 with the opening band. And so we were there to see Foo Fighters. And getting there at that time, we barely were able to stand in the back of the grass. We barely had room to even put our blanket down to sit on. It was that packed. And it's not like we showed up at 8:30 at the time that Foo Fighters was there. So it was crazy how packed it was. So that was a great start of our trip. Waldemere's in the Foo Fighters concert, and they were really good live. And I did something that really I never do with concerts or sporting events, but for this I had to do it, where we walked out at the beginning of the encore. Now, I had studied the set list and knew what songs they generally played, and the encore we weren't necessarily that excited about. Plus, we were able to hear almost all of the encore walking back to our car. But a number of people there warned us, especially the fact that I had 2 kids. Employees and patrons we were standing next to warned us that a place like this with 2-lane highways with 19,000 people in the sellout, that if you don't get out early, it could take you 2 to 3 hours. And at that point, I didn't want to do that. We had to drive further for our trip. But did you enjoy the show?
Yeah, it was great. The only thing that was a little bad about it is it was very quiet.
Oh, yeah. The Blossom Music Center, their speaker system is kind of weak, I thought. Compared to Darien Lake, where we saw Green Day, and Hershey, where we saw Blink-182, this was pretty quiet. And for a rock show, you don't want quiet. You want your ears to feel it a little bit of tinnitus the next day. So that was kind of disappointing, I agree. But he puts on a great show, and they play so many songs, and definitely one of our favorite bands around now. So we were able to get out of there early, got in the car, no traffic at all, and we drove west about 2.5 hours southwest to Columbus, which happens to be our stopping point on so many of these trips when we head out to Holiday World or somewhere in that direction. So many times we stop in Columbus. And so when you stop in Columbus and you wake up in the morning, well, then you wake up and you drive a little bit more southwest and you run into what park?
Oh, Kings Island.
Yeah, Kings Island. And so a nice little lunch break. We have our meal plan, stop at Kings Island, and we just did one Banshee ride for Alex for his first time. And your thoughts on Banshee still the same, right?
Yeah.
They bother your legs.
Well, yeah, it bothered my legs, and it's just, I don't love it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't hate it. It's not one of my favorite coasters.
And Alex felt completely the same, that it wasn't all that forceful. We got the front row ride, and he still didn't love it. So.
I still like Banshee.
Okay, which is fine. Liking it's fine. It's a shame, and as you get taller, that pressure point on your leg hopefully won't be the same, and that you'll like it more if it doesn't bother you. And we got a ride in on Mystic Timbers. We got a ride in on the Beast. And Beast is one of those interesting coasters. The first time I did it, I was such an El Toro fan as far as wooden coasters and thought there's no way this is going to be as good. And I hated the Beast the first time we did it. I thought it had no forces, it didn't have any airtime, but it's one of those rides that I love more and more and more. And I almost feel bad for saying this, but in some ways I almost like it more than Mystic Timbers. And I love Mystic Timbers, but I think that Helix is just so insane.
I like Mystic Timbers better.
Well, Mystic Timbers is smoother.
Well, I would say Beast is very spread out, whereas Mystic Timbers is all in itself, like within itself.
But would you agree with this? That the Helix on the Beast is more intense than any part of Mystic Timbers.
Yeah.
Right? And so I love intensity. Skyrush, El Toro,
Yeah, I like how
Maverick.
like you're just racing through the woods and you pick up speed so easily. So like if you didn't have those trim brakes, you would be flying almost off the track.
Well, that's the dream. Someday that Cedar Fair invests enough money into it, and I don't know how much that would cost, but the idea of a trimless
Maintenance
Beast...
would be, but the maintenance would be like really bad, so I don't think they could do it.
Well, if you took off the top bunch of layers and a lot of the structure and rebuilt it, that's what I'm saying, to its original state, but that might just be too cost prohibitive, and they might not ever do it. But that's the dream. And so I appreciate Beast so much more than I did. And again, why I don't compare coasters. That you can't compare it to El Toro. You can't compare it to Mystic Timbers. They're just different, and you like them for different reasons.
And like,
so,
I feel like the Beast and Voyage are kind of alike because they go out through the forest, but Voyage is a lot more airtime and different in variety.
Completely different coasters, right. El Toro to Voyage to the Beast, also different. And so we just did that, had our lunch, and headed out. Kept going out west following the sun. And when you're heading to Silver Dollar City and you're heading west and you're right there for dinner time, you stop off at...
Bigfoot on the Strip.
You stop for dinner at what theme park that we have a dining plan for?
Where?
Six Flags St. Louis?
Six Flags St.
Yeah,
Louis.
Six Flags St. Louis. And it was really weird because they had been closed for 4 hours before we got there due to storms, and we were there with only about 2 hours left. So I was surprised that they were still open. So it was almost completely empty. We got a couple of rides in on the Boss, and what a difference a year can make with a wooden coaster. Whereas Holiday World's wooden coasters got so much smoother, especially Raven and Voyage this year, the Boss, almost unrideable. It's getting so much worse this year. And the Helix that they took out, that's the one smooth part, I guess.
I mean, there was one part at the ending section that there was one little bunny hop that got me by surprise, and I don't know how to explain it, but it kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah, definitely some moments that caused some pain on that coaster. A lot of people think RMC, but would they have invested the money into that turn if it was going to be RMC'd anytime soon? Well, Screamin' Eagle, if you remember, you could see it from the top of the Boss. They had the crane at the lift hill, so it's interesting what kind of work they were doing in that, so that was closed. So
Maybe retracting?
But the crane was at the lift hill, so there was maybe some kind of issue there. And then we finished with American Thunder, which again we did like 8 to 10 times, which I'm declaring my favorite GCI. That I don't think too many people would agree with me, but I love that ride so much. So many cool elements. So and
it's smooth.
So smooth, yeah. It really is well taken care of, and just a great combination of twister moments and airtime moments. Really love that. So we stayed there till close, and we decided we've got enough time to get to Branson. We headed out towards Branson, got there probably around 1 a.m. And a little bit of a rookie mistake on my part. I had made a reservation on Hotels.com, and generally 99% of the time when I make a reservation, it's with some kind of chain, Motel 6, and boy, that's hit or miss. Some of them are great, some of them not so much. But this time I had made a reservation with a smaller non-chain hotel, and when we got there was no one at the desk at 1 a.m. and I called the numbers on the door and no one was responding. And what I didn't realize is that there are some hotels that aren't 24-hour service. So thankfully we were able to find another hotel and I got my refund. But when booking, always check that small print if it has 24-hour service. At 1 o'clock in the morning, that's not the most fun thing to deal with. So that Friday then, we did the 2 Branson coasters. The Runaway Mountain Coaster, which was by far the better one.
Yes.
The one lift hill one outside of town. You'd agree that's the much better one?
Yes, much better.
Yeah, so really fast and exciting.
Yeah,
versus the Branson coaster with the 2 lift hills.
Yeah, the Branson coaster, it was 2 short lift hills and then it goes down a little bit of a mountain. It's okay. And then the Runaway...
Yeah. Runaway Mountain, yeah.
Runaway Mountain. It's like a really long lift hill that takes almost more than 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. It takes a while to get to the top.
And then you can go really fast, and it feels really intense, and feels like you're going to fly off. And there's some helixes, or there are some helices.
Yeah, very nice. Good correction.
And then there's also actual airtime. Like, if you go fast enough, there's some humps that you get airtime on, like legit.
You know what? Thinking about it right now, I always tell people that it was that kiddie coaster at Seaside that was our first roller coaster ever.
Yeah.
But thinking about the fact that we did a mountain coaster years ago, I never used to think of them as credits, but wacky people in this hobby say that they are coaster credits, so I guess we got to count them. So that was no longer our first coaster. It was at Greek Peak. Those first couple of times I did mountain coasters, I used to put on brakes a little bit, but now we just floor it the whole way. And unless it's on a Groupon or coupon, I think it's hard to justify $20 per mountain coaster, which lasts maybe 7 minutes, compared to a Six Flags membership for $69. It's kind of a weird sort of economic thing to have to pay that much for one ride. But they're fun, but
It's worth it.
Yeah, I would never need to do it more than once.
Yeah, it's worth it for one time, and then if you really like it, maybe a couple more times.
Yeah.
But
With some kind of deal, I could see it. So that was Friday, and after those two coasters, Friday was Bigfoot, then Saturday was the meetup, then Sunday we went to that aquarium just north of Branson, which was beautiful, that we posted pictures of. So from there, on Sunday, we made the drive to Dallas, Texas from there. Through Arkansas and into Texas. And that was a pretty lonely looking drive. There wasn't a lot of natural scenery to look at. There wasn't a lot of exciting things to look at. And you go on this highway that sometimes is 70 miles per hour, and then you go down to 30 miles per hour through a town with traffic lights. Kind of a weird drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we pulled into Dallas again around that 1 a.m. time. And the boys were sleeping at that point. And we had the cool opportunity to drive past over Texas to get to our hotel. And to me, the roller coaster skyline is so important to a park and how it looks. Some are definitely better than others, like Six Flags St. Louis. I love the way it looks from the highway on the hill with the trees.
It's on like the side of the hill, and you can pretty much see everything.
And it's pretty. It really is behind the trees. Well, this was really interesting going to over Texas because it feels in some ways like the park is on the highway. It's very cool how Shockwave, the loops are right there, right off the side of the highway, and you get to see a couple other rides like the New Texas Giant and the multiple towers that are there, like the Oil Derrick and Superman Drop Tower. So it's a really cool looking skyline. So Monday we wake up and we drive past Jerry World. What's Jerry World? Remember?
Nobody know what that is.
Jerry's World, what is it?
Nobody will know what that is.
Lots of people in Dallas, Texas, when we're talking about Dallas, Texas, know what Jerry's World is.
Okay. So, Jerry's World is basically the Dallas Cowboys stadium.
And they were talking about it a lot because of issues with the national anthem and Jerry Jones. So we heard it so much on ESPN radio, and then we drove past Jerry World. And then...
It's not called
Jerry's World? No, you want to just call it AT&T Stadium or whatever nonsense it is. Yeah. Okay. And then after that is the baseball stadium. So it's really cool having that sort of entertainment complex right there.
Yeah, there's the Rangers Stadium. And then right behind it is the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. So it's pretty cool.
It is. It's really neat, that whole area. We lucked out for the entire trip, and weather is something we have to discuss. Looking at the weather before we made this trip in Missouri and Texas.
Yeah, that should be like a tip of the day or something.
Well, that's huge. It really is, because it was saying before we went and then after we went, 105, 106, 107. We lucked out so much. In Branson, it was 88. When we got there at over Texas, it was about 77 degrees and drizzling. And we actually had jackets on. So the hottest it got there was about 87. And then eventually, which we'll talk about in one of the next episodes, Fiesta, Texas, same thing. It barely reached 90 for a little bit one day. So we lucked out so much. Cedar Point, that trip with Drunken Vengeance, was way hotter than any of our Texas parks. So we really lucked out there. So we parked pretty close to the front, and I like the front entrance. Kind of had a kind of cool feel to it. And some areas are really quaint near that entrance, like France and the Old South and Spain and Mexico. When you go through the entrance, everything to the left heading towards New Texas Giant, those areas I thought were really well themed.
Yeah, they had it was an Old West theme, and then they had great theming for all of them. Like the France area, it was themed all the France music and guitars. There were a bunch of those.
Yeah, it looked great. And it wasn't like a half-hearted, we'll throw a house that looks old here and something else there. It was the whole area, and it really felt very immersive and authentic and sort of old but not run down.
Yeah, and then I feel like that's the half of the park all the way to the left that has the old theming that's, not a typical Six Flags where it's all the old Western theming and the France theming and all of that. And then to your right is more of the typical Six Flags stuff.
Very well stated. So when you go to the right, you're Gotham City and Boomtown in the tower section. Really not as nice, kind of a lot more open and not as treed as those old areas. So I would think on a super hot day, that area could be pretty brutal. So I think that's perfectly stated. The first thing that we went to was the Runaway Mountain Coaster, and I really knew nothing about it. There really isn't any theming inside. It's a little bit darker than Skull Mountain, so I'll give it credit that way. Really odd-looking restraints. The cars were so odd-looking, but they were comfortable. So what do you think? How did you compare it to Skull Mountain, which we've rode so many times?
I mean, it's basically the same thing as Skull Mountain, but a little bit darker, but with no theme. I was actually kind of disappointed because I thought Runaway Mountain was going to have a lot of theming, but it really didn't.
No, it really didn't. It's just darkness inside. The drop is not as good as Skull Mountain, but the rest of it I think is better. There were some helices in there that were actually really intense and fun. That's how we remembered it. And Alex wanted to go on so badly back, but we never made it back to it. That was our first ride of the day, and we never made it back. After that, we decided to head over to New Texas Giant, and we wanted to get on that. We figured that was probably one of the rides that had the longest lines. And it took a while to open up. There was rain, as we said, and possible storms in the distance, plus they might have some kind of policy about opening up a certain amount of time after rain ends. So we waited about 30 minutes, but we were on the second train and you guys were able to get the front row. And Alex really likes the view from the front row, so we did it for the front row first time. And those restraints were so weird. Did you think they were more comfortable than the newer restraints that RMC makes?
Well, they're just different. Like, I don't think they're more comfortable or more rough. They're just different.
Really different. And the train was kind of interesting, how they made it look like an old Texas car. But the weird thing is, do you remember what were on the sides of us on the train?
Windows.
Yeah, there were windows. I don't know if that was part of the theming or to protect you, but so that it was really odd looking.
And the train was a lot bigger than the ones that they make today.
Oh, definitely a lot larger as part of that car theming, but they definitely had that look.
Yeah.
When we got off New Texas Giant, second train of the day, what did you think? We looked at each other and said...
I was a little disappointed. It was kind of boring. It didn't really do anything we liked.
It was kind of disappointing. I guess it's like watching all of the new Marvel movies, like Infinity Wars, and then going back and seeing Iron Man cartoon from the 60s. If that's the first RMC we ever did, we probably would have been like, whoa, that's crazy. But when you've done as many as we've done already, that just felt so bland and boring. Even the tunnels really didn't do much. I don't know. So we eventually did come back later and went back row, late afternoon. And I think we said we liked it better and it felt a little faster. But still, not many elements that we were all that impressed with. A lot wasn't open. It wasn't the best morning for Over Texas. Can you remember some of the rides that were closed?
So it was Guy Screamer.
Yeah, that closed for about 45 minutes.
It was Justice League.
Justice League. That opened way late in the afternoon.
It was Titan.
And Titan made me nervous because that was one of the rides I was most looking forward to.
It was Riddler's Revenge.
Okay, their Frisbee pendulum ride. Yeah. Not the biggest deal. I didn't even look to see if that was a 52 or 54 inch. But we've done them, so I'm not too worried about that.
It was Joker.
And Joker never opened. There was never anyone working on it. There was never anyone there. It just was out of commission for whatever reason.
And it was Vibora.
And that's a disappointing one because that's not a clone. And that was the one we thought was like those water raft rides at first when we saw it. Because they painted the different colors, like those penguin rides.
It was the one that... There's one at Six Flags America, and then there was one at Six Flags New England.
And what
they took it out for Joker.
Exactly. So that's really what it looks like, but a bobsled coaster, and that never opened as well. And I'm not sure if in a lot of those cases if it was maintenance or if it was just staffing. So there were some disappointments there. And then the oil derrick has been closed. I think that's getting work.
Is that the other log flume?
Oil derrick is their tower. That's their version of the Eiffel Tower. That's that big orange thing.
And then, actually, there's another one, too.
Yeah.
There's two sides of the log flume, and only one of them was open, so...
Very good.
Let's see how many that is. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, 8 different things that were either closed for a long time or closed all day. So that was a little bit of a strike, but still, we weren't going to let that ruin our day. Well, then we headed over to Shockwave next, their Schwarzkopf looper. And on the train ride, we found out it was pretty hilarious. He said, you remember he said it broke the record for a tallest coaster or something like that for 2 days or something like that. It was pretty funny. I was excited about this because I wanted to compare it to Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia and Super Duper Looper. Obviously, that's more kiddie, but I really like Schwarzkopf's and want to do as many as I can. And in their advertisement, it actually has it on the park map here that I looked at, that it says right on it that it has 5.9 Gs, which it makes it a pretty intense coaster. So What did you think of Shockwave?
Oh, I love this coaster so much. Like, at first, you think it's just like a little kitty looper for starters. But once you hit that first loop, it pulls you through it so intense. I love this coaster so much.
You know, and when you say it like that, you know what it reminds me of? A loop that's crazy intense. There aren't many that we've done that have loops that are crazy intense, especially at the end of the loop, with flyers that you've done.
Oh, right, yeah. All the flying coasters.
Yeah, Superman and then Flying Dutchman as well. The first loop especially made me make a noise, especially the first one, like, ugh! It was pretty intense.
It pulls you through that loop. And it's not like a for starter people who want to get into it. It's pretty intense.
And the crazy thing about that, when you say it like that, I'm glad you brought that up, is the whole issue, and as theme park families, we have to talk about that, height requirements.
Yes.
The height requirement on this was incredibly short. Let's take a look at the park map right now.
Oh my gosh.
I want to be official here.
It is a park map, by the way.
It is. Yep, it's the real deal. We're looking at it right in front of us here. Where do we have...
Let's see. It's, it wouldn't be there. Let's see.
Oh, no, it's a and funny, they call it moderate Six Flags Thrills. It doesn't make the maximum Six Flags Thrills section. And
If I were the president or whatever who was designing the map, I would put it at max.
Isn't that funny? I guarantee we could look at some of the maximum ones. Like, they call Runaway Mountain maximum.
They call Runaway Mountain maximum,
but Shockwave with 5.9 Gs is only moderate.
Let's see. So there's Catwoman, Whip, Joker, Harley Quinn, Riddler, Skyscraper, Mr. Freeze, Batman, Superman, Rodeo, and Runaway Mountain, and Texas Giant, and Titan
are all maximum.
Are all on maximum.
Meanwhile, Shockwave with that first loop is more intense than all of them. But look, can you see what
I wouldn't say all of them.
But look what Shockwave's height requirement is. And that's what I thought I remembered.
42 inches?
So
wow.
Maddie can do that next year. Little 3-year-old Maddie will be able to do that next year. And so that's why height requirements are such a frustrating thing. That is more intense than many 54-inch coasters, but it's the restraint, I suppose. Yeah. We did that at least 5 times without getting off. Sometimes we might have switched rows, but that line was so short. And you kind of have to walk a little bit out of the way. And it's weird because you walk kind of through a little bit of a go-kart area.
There's like a little area that you have to go across train tracks to, and it's just a little area with go-karts, and then just that coaster Shockwave, and then it's very weird.
And it's interesting because then we'll chat about this in another episode, but we did go to Six Flags Over Georgia and we did ride Mindbender immediately to compare them. And which one do you like better?
I think I like Shockwave better.
Yes, Shockwave is more intense. It's not even close. I love Mindbender. It has the better setting by far. You've got the trees, you've got the pond, so that makes it a lot better. But that diving curve to the water is not an inversion. I know they market it as one, but I say no on that turn towards the pond on Mindbender being an inversion. So Shockwave, way more intense, and I loved it. And it wasn't only those 2 loops, you had 2 airtime moments, especially in the back, that throw you out of the seat. So absolutely loved it. We did it then, we did a couple more later, which was terrific. We walked past the Superman Tower of Power, which we didn't wind up doing, but it kind of looked cool that it was surrounded by water. There aren't many drop towers like that have ponds all around it, so I thought that was kind of neat. And we went to the Runaway Mine Train and the Mini Mine Train, advertised as the first mine train ever, and I think also one of the first tubular track coasters. Some say it's the first, but then you've got the coaster in the mountains there at Disney that everyone says is the first. So there's some controversy about that, but it's an early one nonetheless. So we did the bigger mine train first. It's really weird that they have the 2 mine trains right next to each other. Yeah. And what did we find really odd about the mine train?
So it goes like kind of slow and it has a ton of lift hills. And then it's very random at the end.
So random.
You go into like this little house that has like wax figures that are having like a party.
And, playing poker, I think.
Random.
It's so weird. Like there were no other parts where you were in any theme at all. So it's trees, grass,
like
trees, grass, lift hill, trees, grass, drop, lift hill.
And like the name, like, it's just a mine train that has nothing to do with what was in the house.
Or mines. There's no mine there either. Although I guess the track is supposed to look like it. So you go through this one house, it's like, what? We were just looking at each other like, okay, I guess that happened. And then we went out to the mini mine train, which has truly no theming.
Yeah, it feels very short.
Yeah, and it was short. But one of the things I liked about the mini mine train is that it interacted with Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. So the fact that you kind of see it launch past you, I thought was kind of cool. And we experienced the weird thing, if you remember this on mini mine train, the weird rule that only Over Texas seems to have about where...
Yeah.
You remember?
You have to have 2 people in the back row or closest to the back.
Right. That I completely forgot that. I remember I read it somewhere. It might have even been Beard Man who told me this. But you cannot have a single rider in the back row. And I got in the back row alone. The 2 boys were in front of me. And then we had to switch around. I think it has something to do with they want to have 2 people, an eyewitness for if something happens. I'm not exactly sure. So that was kind of the...
Yeah. What you told me is there has to be 2 people wherever the person closest to the back is.
Yeah.
And so there has to be 2 people there because if somebody's like fooling around while they're on their ride, they could tell the ride apps or something. And there can't be 1 person there because if that 1 person does something silly, then they have to have 2 people there in case, the other person in the back row does something silly.
But if the 2 people who do things silly are both friends, then they're not going to admit doing something silly anyway. So that way it's kind of weird. But you actually remembered a couple of the times when we went on other rides. And you were like, oh, you can't, nope, no single ride in the back row. You remembered that and did a good job.
When we were on Titan one of the times and I was single riding because you guys wanted to do front row, I wanted to do back row because it was the fastest line. But I remembered...
that you couldn't do it.
Yeah, so I had to go into a different row.
It's good that you remember that. After that, we did Catwoman's Whip. We went there earlier in the day, but there was a protein spill, and you can imagine that would be a ride that would happen on something that spins round and round. So we went back later, and that's, I think, the Enterprise kind of replacement. That Enterprise are going away, and this is kind of replacing them.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, I think.
But you're seated in like a coaster chair with your legs dangling. It's almost like an inverted coaster seat. And it's 48 inches instead of 54. Now, I still haven't done an Enterprise because these guys were never tall enough and I never did one on my own. So I don't
know if you want to do them because you probably get dizzy.
Well, at some point, but I guess I can't do Witch's Wheel. That's not going to happen.
You should wait until I'm going to do it with you.
Yeah, there are plenty of other Enterprise. At Dorney, I'm sure we'll do that one at some point. Maybe over Haunt, we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
What did you think of Catwoman's Whip?
It was actually pretty good. The forces were pretty crazy for 48 inches. I mean, you go pretty fast.
You do go fast. And the funny thing is, I actually found it so relaxing. I was able to close my eyes and kind of relax. It was a very comforting sort of ride.
Yeah, but for us, the sun was kind of in our eyes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, maybe that's why I closed my eyes, I think. So I think they're pretty cool. It's a good flat ride. After that, we did Pandemonium, which is okay, but compared to Time Traveler, that spinning coaster wasn't that great. But interesting that some of the Pandemoniums are a different layout, that they're not all exactly the same. Well, we did get onto Sky Screamer, and that was cool. I just love the views on that, which is one of the tall ones. Seeing the stadiums really well, I thought was kind of neat, which really don't bother me at all anymore. In the beginning, they kind of freaked me out a little bit, but now Sky Screamers don't bother me at all. Well, then, kind of an odd name coaster and an odd location for the coaster. Remember what the name of that one was?
Yosemite Sam?
Yosemite Sam, exactly. Yosemite Sam Judge Roy Scream. What an odd location where it's near Yosemite Sam coaster. Judge Roy Scream, very odd, and you might have seen this on Google Maps if you haven't been there. But it's really weird where you go through a tunnel near Sky Screamer under a road, and then they kind of stuck this coaster on its own plot of land next to a pond, and it feels like you're completely out of the park. In fact, I think they could have used Six Flags Over George's slogan for Goliath. So big, it leaves the park, that kind of thing. And I was nervous getting on it because the paint did not look very good. Yeah. It is flaking everywhere.
We actually got a piece of it. I got a piece of it.
That was funny. Like the gate fell off.
No, it was not a piece of the gate.
What was it?
It was like a screw.
Yes, a screw from the gate. And
it was not the gate. It was the coaster.
The coaster. It was actually on the coaster. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be, I thought, smoother than I thought it was going to be.
I didn't really like it. It was okay.
We've written worse wooden coasters. Yes. I know a lot of people say get rid of it, demolish it. I thought it was fine.
I mean, I could do without it, but I want to see if they take it out. Like, what would they replace there?
Interesting with what they could do there. Because right now, it's their only traditional wooden coaster. And I think every park needs to have at least one. Now, even though that's not the greatest example, because New Texas Giant doesn't count. So I think they should keep it and just try to upkeep it as well as they can. Really not much airtime, but not painful, so I'll take it. At that point, we heard from a ride up that Titan had opened, and so we were really excited about that because there aren't many hypers from companies that we haven't done, so I was excited about that. And so that is a ride, again, that's kind of by itself. You have to walk through like a tumbleweed area that looks like the desert. You go past the scrambler.
It's right next to the pavilions, and there's just one tiny sign that says Titan, and so you have to walk.
That sign that was near the log flume. It's
right outside of the log flume, and so you have to walk for a little bit, and then there's a scrambler right there, which is very random.
Random scrambler all by itself.
And then there are the pavilions, and there's like ropes that is the starting for the queue line of Titan. And it's very weird because there are there's one exit, one fast lane, or one fast pass, and then one main one. And they should put like a sign that says which one it is, because it was kind of confusing.
That, especially for first-time people going there, not knowing where to walk, could absolutely be confusing there. And as we walk and you see the track as you go under the station, you immediately asked about the manufacturer.
Yeah, I thought it was B&M because it looks exactly like B&M.
And it was a couple of people from GM Vinola who had worked with B&M, so that was that connection there. So I had known this POV, I had seen it a couple years ago, and I was really excited to try it and see how different it was. And this was our surprise of the park.
This is the hidden gem. This is like the thing that people don't talk about that they have to talk about it more.
I don't know why it doesn't get talked about more, because you also have Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which is the same, and I thought it was terrific. So first drop I thought was okay, not great, not terrible.
It's your typical first drop and then turn around and
better than Steel Force's first drop, certainly.
Yeah.
And a nice view, and one thing I liked about the view is you can see Six Flags' water park, which is about a half mile away. It's a separate ticket, separate park, and you get a little view of that just down the highway. So the turn I thought was kind of cool, and it was kind of weird that the turn after the first drop, which is really high, is not banked at all. So that makes it a little freaky that it doesn't bank after that first drop because you're still going pretty fast. Then you get into the little bit of a helix, which is pretty fast, and then you come to that mid-break run, which is about as slow as a mid-break run can be, right?
Yeah, you slow down so much, but I know why they do. Well, actually, before the break one, isn't there the helix?
Yeah, that's what I said. You do a little bit of a helix.
Yeah.
And then you hit the break.
That's the part that I actually grayed out a little.
Yeah.
It was going pretty fast that I graded out.
Oh, that's cool that you did, yeah, because that doesn't happen much.
It was so dark for me that there was just a little spot that I could see.
Well, I think Crazy Aunt Sue, who I know loves this ride as well, that she says she grays out a little bit as well.
I love
Dan the T-shirt guy's aunt, yeah. So she's a big supporter of this ride as well. And so it's interesting at that point where you come to almost a dead stop, even more than Anaconda at King's Dominion. Yeah. It's like you're almost completely stopped. And boy, you hit that brake run hard. Brakes are slam you, so you really have to prepare for it. But the one time I did it in the front row with Alex, it was so neat, and that's why I'm so glad I did it. Once you start tilting down and curving, in that front row, you're almost facing the ground completely. And then the rest of it, that helix is great into the brake run. So I'd have to say conservatively, we did Titan somewhere about 7-8 times total.
I love Titan so much.
Well, and look at it. We did New Texas Giant twice. We did Titan somewhere around 8 times. Love that ride.
I would definitely recommend it if you're going there.
Oh, absolutely. And no part of it I thought was rough at all. I didn't find
it wasn't that rough,
but intense, and what a joy. So surprise of the day there. And I might get in trouble with a lot of people, but I think I can say I like it more than B&M Hypers because it...
Well, some of them.
You still have so many more to do, so you can wait till you make that opinion on your own. And we actually ended our night with it. Our last ride of the night, we ended on Titan. We liked it so much. Well, after that, we went to the El Aserradero log flume, and Beardman suggested that it was the first log flume, so we said we had to do it. And it was sad seeing the first one that was in such disrepair, hadn't been open for a month and a half or two, and didn't look like they were working on it. It looked like it had been closed.
It looked like it hadn't been open for almost 100 years.
It did. It looked so sad, like it was falling apart and you were going to start seeing ghouls coming out of it. It looked like something out of Haunt, right? As far as I'm concerned. We did the other one, and I thought it's the first one, so I can cut slack, but I didn't think it was anything all that special. But it was cool to do it, since it's historical. Roaring Rapids ride, their boat ride, That was pretty good. We didn't get soaked. We did have our rain jackets because it rained early in the day, so one of the times we could take advantage of it so our shirts didn't get soaked. But I don't think there were any waterfalls on that one at all. The Roaring Rapids ride, that's the one near Superman, the tower, that Rapids ride.
You don't get two of them.
To round out the water rides, we didn't do Aquaman, their Shoot the Chutes ride, but I thought it was cool that they had theming. No Shoot the Chutes rides have theming like
And
that.
we did like a little kiddie ride that like it has little squirters and there are boats.
Oh yeah, the tiny kiddie ride.
Yeah, and you actually get pretty wet from that.
Yeah, so it's like a mini version of Dollywood's and Silver Dollar City's rides that you have like a gun and shoot at people. They're like those much larger ones. So you guys did that and I sat that one out. Well, I say that's one of the only Shoot the Chutes rides that has theming, but of course Busch Gardens has a little ride called Pompeii that has a little bit of theming in it. So we'll talk about that next time. In the next episode. We did the train ride after that, and we did it 1.5 times. And I thought it was interesting because the first time around it was recording that just kind of told you about the different parts of the park and a little bit of the history. But the second time you had the guide on the microphone, and he added a lot of humor to it, and I thought that was kind of cool. And you know what my favorite part of the train ride was?
What?
It didn't catch on fire.
What? Oh, yeah. Sure.
Because that's always a positive when a park's train ride doesn't catch fire. Because it's happened multiple times this year, hasn't it?
Yeah, like 3 or 4.
Yeah. So Busch Gardens and over Georgia. So we were safe and that was good. Well, then as you mentioned before, the Silly Boat Dark Ride, Yosemite Sam's Gold River Adventure. And I think I had heard someone mention this, but I really didn't know anything about it. And I thought it was great fun. It was no Monster Mansion from over Georgia, not even close. But for what it was, I thought it was okay. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good. Like, you could see the animatronics. There was a lot happening. Like, there were, like, a lot of posters that said, Yosemite Sam wanted. If you find this guy, you get, like, something. And then there were Bugs Bunny things. And there were other sheriffs,
Yes, exactly.
And
so it was a
then-
whole storyline.
And it was kind of like the regular shows where Yosemite Sam tries to get the Bugs Bunny, and then Bugs Bunny tricks him out with his own thing. And it's just very fun.
And I think all the theming, from what I could tell, was working. They had gag cannons and those kind of things. So I really enjoyed it. And it ended with a funny kind of moment. So I thought that was really well done. And on a hot day, again, I think a kind of ride that would be great to get into. So that was pretty much everything we did. The 54-inch coasters, of course, we left out since Alex is there. So you had Mr. Freeze and Batman. And
there was...
I think that's kind of about it. Overall, such a quality park, even with the things that were closed, and a lot of them clones of things we've already done, so it didn't bother me. A top-tier Six Flags park.
One of the best.
One of the best. Yeah, exactly. So I would highly recommend it if you haven't been there yet.
And
we
it's
had a great
very pretty,
time.
so.
It is. It really is. It's kind of interesting. You've got a combination of city on the outskirts, but then you also feel you feel like you're in a park.
There are a bunch of flowers and trees and shade, which is nice.
We caught a little bit. We really didn't get to watch it because Alex doesn't like loud noises, but they had that gun show that they were putting on, sort of the Wild West cowboy show.
Yeah.
And it was loud. The shotgun sounds that they had were super loud. And for a lot of kids who don't like loud noises, that was pretty rough. So I couldn't recommend the park anymore. We really had a great time. Employees I thought were pretty solid. So it really was a fun day at that park. So from there, we left at closing, and from there drove another bunch of hours until we hit New Braunfels, Texas, just north of San Antonio for Fiesta, Texas, which we'll save for another episode. And New Braunfels is where one of the Schlitterbahns is, but unfortunately we didn't get time to do that. Okay, for our ride of the day, we'll talk about Twisted Cyclone for our ride of the day. A couple days after this, as we made our way back east, we stopped off at Six Flags Over Georgia, and this was our new credit at that Six Flags park, as it was an RMC that we hadn't done yet. So Twisted Cyclone, it's weird. Yes. We did other coasters there more than we did this one.
Yeah, but it was kind of a long line though.
It was. The station was full, but at least it moved quickly when you were in that station. And I had watched the POV once, but I didn't remember it when it first came out. I don't know, kind of an interesting ride.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like Wicked Cyclone. It's very low to the ground. There are a lot of little curves. Yeah. And it's very fun and unique.
What a great replacement.
Yeah.
Now didn't you like Cyclone better than I did, I think, maybe?
Yeah, you said really bad.
Oh, God.
Alex and I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I found it brutal. This one I really enjoyed. I liked those little bumps in one little outward bank before you get to the lift hill. Those are always fun.
You go like 90 degrees to the sideways or something.
Well, I'm talking about before the lift hill. Those little hops and outward banks. So those are cute. Then going up the lift hill, you see the little signs, right?
Yeah.
Little theming. Like storms are coming, get your drinks ready, stuff like that. But then first drop I really liked, just like Wicked Cyclone, which isn't very tall. I thought this was a great drop where you curve a little bit to the left. And then, very interesting from there, and this is what makes this RMC a little bit different, that you have almost that cobra roll after that, where you invert one way, then you invert out the other way, almost like a boomerang. So I thought that was kind of a neat element. Then I think that's what you were talking about. After that, you've got that outward bank, that fan turn.
Yeah, it's very unique. I mean, I feel like it's a lot like Lightning Rod, where it has all of those turns that go really far to the side.
Which is fun. I like when you're on your side like that. And Steel Vengeance certainly has those moments as well. And a lot of people criticize it, that it's a little bit short, and certainly it can have that criticism, as it is a pretty short ride. So to wait a long time for a ride that's not that long can be a little frustrating. But when you consider what was there before, I think this is a great replacement. Even though a lot of wood coaster enthusiasts are a little bit upset about that, I thought it was a really terrific ride. Next time we get down there, we'll ride it plenty more. And so I think that park is really improving a lot when you look at their top 3 or 4 coasters now.
Tip of the day, tip of the day. It's the tip of the day. Tip of the day, tip of the day. It's the tip of the day.
Yeah.
For a tip, don't cancel plans based on weather reports would be my tip. When we went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg last week, the weather reports were horrible.
It was like 90% chance of rain.
An 80% chance of thunderstorms. It looked terrible. And I even said to Clint, maybe we should delay it. Maybe we shouldn't go. And he's just like, nope, let's go for it. And I'm so glad we did. It drizzled a little bit in one spot, right? A tiny little bit of drizzle at one spot. And the park was closed for an hour because thunderstorms were in the area, but they never actually hit the park. And one of the ride attendants that was near the Dragon Play area, she wound up saying that a lot of times the ocean breezes keep the storms from really getting to the park. So it turned out to be a terrific day. Our longest wait was a 3-train wait on Verbolten, also known as the German car rental coaster. So that was an amazing day because of that weather report. So that was a pretty awesome experience. So we'll talk about that in a future episode, including the Battle for Virtual Reality ride that we did.
No, it's called the
Battle for Virtual Reality.
No,
with
the
a colored heart.
Ire.
Oh, that Battle for Ire? Okay. Or that one.
Ire.
Battle of Ire. Interesting ride, so we'll chat about that in the future as well. But from that trip that we went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Clint recorded a new In the Loop video with Reese and the 3 of us, Andrew, Alex, and I. And so I would definitely suggest to check that out.
It's very funny.
It's very funny. Yeah, definitely check that out. There's some really good moments, and Reese is just a superstar in that video. So that's about 5-6 videos back on In the Loop if you want to check that video out. We had a lot of fun making that. The main topic of that was Busch Gardens' new all-day eating plan. They eat every 45 minutes like some of the other chains have, and that was new, I think, for this year. Clint hadn't heard of that.
It's very worth it.
But yeah, it was very worth it for the 3 of us.
We could have got like 6 meals, right?
Yeah, which was for the 3 of us plenty. So you can check out that video, and there's some other comedic moments in it. We're excited here. Six Flags and Carowinds news that we'll be posting about here pretty soon, as that'll be its own episode. And so I'm excited about that. We hope everyone has an awesome Labor Day weekend, whether you're going to the park, whether you are going to the beach, whether you're going to the mountains, whatever you're doing. Hope you have a great Labor Day. And for those of you who started school, we hope you've had a great back to school, right?
Yep, good luck.
And for those of you who are going back next week, hope it works out as well and that you have fun teachers and exciting times. We're big fans of the Wigan Football Club, and when they win, it is a rout.
We call it soccer here in America, where I'm a beast. Andrew out.